Perfect. Thank you, Carol, and thank you, members, for attending this place board meeting. First of all, subs and nominations. Do we have any subs here? Or subs nominated, rather. Are there any subs for this meeting?
I think you're fully present.
No, yeah. It's a full house. Very
full
good.
house today. You have had apologies from Councillor Scallion.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Noted. Item number 2, members' interest. Does any member have any interest on anything on the agenda?
Nothing at all.
Nothing. I think I should note that I don't know if this is an interest or not, it probably actually is. I have used Hip Home Library on a number of occasions. And also item number 4, I'm stepping away from the chair, and Councillor Fenton Glynn has kindly offered to take up the chair for this item, because that's my petition, so I'll be presenting to the panel. So that's my interest declared. Anything else, members? No? Very good. Admissions to the public? Yep, the public are here. We are live on YouTube. Right, on to the items of the agenda then. Item number 4. So this is a petition, like I say. Councillor Fenton Glynn, could I hand over to you? Is that okay?
Yep, no problem at all. Okay, so I will, as chair, just double check the petitioners who wish to speak. Can I just check, George, is that you and Mr. Brooke? Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay,
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go with whichever order you want to do it in. If you could both kind of just give a kind of quick presentation of your concerns, and we'll move on from that point.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Chair. It's a bit of a bizarre start to a meeting, but there we go. Don't love it too much, Councillor Fenton Glynn. So regarding the petition then, so obviously you've got myself, we've got a petition here with 800 signatures on to save Hip Home Library, and I'm so privileged to introduce Mr. Brooke. Now, Mr. Brooke is an absolute fantastic resident in the Hip Home and Library Board. I don't want to say he's a community leader because that sounds cheesy, but he embraces all the characteristics of a community leader. Now, what I was hoping to do today, I was hoping to set out a bit of a preamble on, first of all, why I don't agree with the Cabinet's decision to close Hip Home Library. And then I was hoping to set out some quite direct questions about the decision to close Hip Home Library, which I'm hoping and I'm sure it will produce some direct answers from the Cabinet members. So the preamble, and then I might add, I will pass on to Mr. Brooke, he's got a vast amount of experience in organising community initiatives, and Mr. Brooke's going to take us on our preferred model of how we would like to proceed if the Cabinet maintains its current course of action in closing the library. So first of all, I don't agree that Hip Home Library should close. I've made this point pretty crystal clear on many occasions. I don't agree it should close, primarily because there's other libraries that are being kept open that are actually used less than Hip Home Library. I think this is inherently unfair for the residents in my ward. And Hip Home Library, it's also a special case because it's an income generator. And by that, what I mean is the bottom 2 units in the library generate income for the council. And last night we heard how we're trying to be an entrepreneurial council. We're trying to really commercialise what we're trying to do on this council. And I don't think it's necessarily preferable to get rid or close a library, which is indeed an income generator. The bottom 2 units produce, I've put a roundabout figure at £12,000 for the council. One of the units is tenanted out. The second unit is not tenanted out. But regarding the second unit, I've actually received an email from a proposed tenant who almost had an agreement with the council, and the council actually U-turned on the agreement only a few months ago. And I presume the reason why they U-turned on this agreement to lease out one of the units is because of this decision to close the library. Now, the interesting thing about this income generating factor is the library can actually be financially self-sustainable, and we can actually use the capital from the leases to invest in the service which that building, the services incorporated in that building. I think that is really the model we should be striving for here. And I've also outlined how the savings, the £35,000 savings associated with this library cut can be achieved through mothballing the asset short term. But I appreciate that I don't have control of the council, and I appreciate that nonetheless the Cabinet are wishing to proceed with closing Hip Home Library. So I do have some direct questions that I would like to ask politely to the Cabinet members, here. First of all, question number one, have you conducted a community impact assessment? Question number two, have you conducted an equality impact assessment? And if so, please could you send members the equality impact assessment associated with the decision to close the libraries? Number three, when do you intend to consult with residents about the decision to close the library? Number four, have you undertaken a review of how the council will be running a comprehensive and efficient library service after libraries have been closed? And number five, the Cabinet have suggested that we're going to be looking at volunteer models regarding these libraries. What consideration have you given to the professional and ethical standards to which professional librarians must adhere to? Question number six, the government require councils who are considering changes to their library service to inform the DCMS about their proposals for public engagement and consultation. Has this been taking place? And question number seven, I presume that a scoring criteria has been used here to appraise libraries. This is the only way to provide an objective basis for library closures. Could you please elaborate on what scoring criteria has been used? Now that's it from me, and I'm going to pass on to Mr. Brooke now.
Quickly, I'm going to chair for a second, if that's okay.
Of course, yeah, sorry.
I'm just going to get the Cabinet member for a second. Now, would you like to address kind of some of those questions toward the end? Or would you like to take some time between George and John speaking? Sorry, Mr. Brooke, I beg your pardon, to address some of those questions.
Please, Josh, call me John, for goodness sake.
Yeah, so would you rather address the questions now, or would you rather address them kind of once John/Mr. Brooke has spoken?
Chair, I'm entirely in your hands. I'm very happy to hear from John next.
Right.
And then I'll come back as best I can in response to the questions that have been raised, and perhaps some other points that John is going to raise.
That'd be great. Okay, John.
Right. Now, I'm not pumped up about this. This is a friendly approach. George has somewhat egged me up rather grandly, but yes, I am involved. Just to set the scene, I was a local head teacher in Lightcliffe. I was chairman of the cricket club. I'm president now. I'm chairman of a litter picking group. I'm on the graveyard committee. I'm secretary of the History Society. I could go on. Some of us get landed with all these things, and I suppose I'm a gregarious animal, so I am involved in a lot. So that's the scene. All I want to say to everybody is I've got enormous support from a group of people who would support this library remaining open. Now, I know the buildings of historical interest. It was Hipper Home Council offices at one time before Brighouse came along in 1937, I think. So it's a fine public building on the high street. And I think it belongs to the public in that sense. But I'm aware that it needs maintenance. There's the roof, there's the building, there's the heating, there's the lift. But George is right, it is generating some income as well. So that could help to offset it. But there are a group of people who would happily help to run this library. The local history society will possibly meet there for committee meetings and so on. There's a book group ready to go. There's discussion groups. There are many things. Lightcliffe's an area of some culture, to be honest. I'm not pretending we're all highly intelligent, but it is, if Lightcliffe cannot support a library and Hipper Home, I dread for the rest of the country, to be honest, because there are so many people in this area who are involved in community things. So all I'm saying is a meeting with some council officers, councillors, in a spirit of really friendliness, not in any spirit of criticism. If we can move forward and work together, I think this building could be saved for the community. I just don't want it selling off, to be honest. And we could also encourage more library use then as well, because despite the fact George says it's pretty well used, I don't think it's as well used as it could be, to be honest. But this isn't Bailiff Bridge Library that was stuck up some residential drive in a terrible place. Why Brighouse ever built it there, I don't know. This is on the high street. This is a real presence. And I think it's worth supporting. So all I'm saying is, despite the fact I think I'm too old for all this, I think I could round up some tremendous support from people, early retired, people with educational backgrounds, professional backgrounds. And I reckon with the support of the council, a council I have a lot of time for, by the way, in every sense of the word, I think we could make this, make a go of this. So that's enough, George. I don't want to get into a political speech. I am apolitical. I am apolitical, by the way. My son did work for Linda Reard, and I have to confess that. Some of you might know him. But I'm very much a man of the centre ground. Look, you're a decent set of people. Let's give it a go. And I was on the library committee for the new library as well. That's another thing I've stuck my feelings into, and that's been a success. So go for it, folks. It's worth it.
Okay. I think we're all feeling quite inspired after that. What I'll do, I'm going to go to Jenny first, and then Councillor Dacre. Sorry, Councillor Lynn first, and then Councillor Dacre, and just kind of get some reflections both on kind of John's potential proposals and also on some of the kind of more specific questions that George asked, and just see where we are from there. After which, if you want to bring in one of the officers, then that's fine. But otherwise, what I might try to do is then bring in the panelists. Panelists, I can't see any hands raised on the raise hand function. So if you can indicate in the chat if you want to speak, then I'll ask you please to do it that way. So Councillor Lynn first, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, John, and all power to the History Society and all the other things that are going on there. That's absolutely great. And of course, I've already had one meeting with George and with representative of the History Society when we kind of just talked a little bit about what might be involved in any possible community asset transfer. First of all, I'd like to say that, I welcome the chance to kind of explore this a bit more now. It's not that people aren't enthusiastic about wanting to and recognising that that the library is a building that people are fond of. As you say, it's got a lot of history and so on. But I'm afraid that we're in a situation where we've had no alternative but to really seek to make some savings from our libraries. From our library's budget, and they've been the savings have been forced on us. So I won't go over that, and this isn't really about that. But it's just if you can take it as read, that in a sense we've retained all our community libraries for as long as we could, but 2020, unfortunately, is the year when we've had to face facts and face facts about the budget. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to go through all of the questions about because in fact I'd quite welcome to an opportunity to be able to take those perhaps at the end. But what I would want to say is that there were a couple of things which were pointed out by George in his preamble, which aren't actually, strictly speaking, correct. First of all, the implication that the units that the commercial units, which he says, you know, are income generating. Yes, they are income generating when they're let. My understanding is that they don't bring in 12,000, that they bring in nearer 8,500. Now, the problem that we've got is that the actual property running costs for the library are substantially more than that. That's the property running costs. That's not the cost of actually paying for the staff. So unfortunately, although obviously the units when they are fully tenanted bring in about £8,500, but the actual property costs all round for the library are of the order of 18,000. So there's a £10,000 deficit. So it's not true to say that it's, I mean, it is income generating, but it's not sufficient to actually cover the costs of offsetting the costs of running the library. The second thing is that the issues facing, there are a number of issues. Anybody that knows the building will know that there's a number of issues facing the library, which relate to the condition of the building. I think John mentioned that you know, it's like any building, it needs maintenance, and it's been estimated that I think the latest figures I've got are in excess, about 190,000, but in excess of 200,000 if you include contingencies and everything else of work which really needs to be done to bring it up to standard, including the issue of access. So it was for that reason that we had to look seriously at whether actually, if we were going to have to close some libraries, Hipper Home was going to have to be one of them. Now, in terms of the actual usage of the libraries, and relating back to the question that George asked about, you know, how did we go about assessing this? The criteria that we used were really, I mean, there were two fundamental criteria that we felt was quite important. Well, three, I suppose. There was the usage, and Hipper Home Library is, if you score in terms of the numbers of visits and so on, is 13th out of 20. So it's in the middle range, really. It's not the top, it's not the bottom. It's in the middle range, 13th out of 20. We also wanted to consider the distance to one of our hub libraries, because there are some communities which would be kind of quite a significant distance from that. And we also wanted to think about trying to focus, and you'll not be surprised to hear me as a Labour member saying this, we also wanted to focus on communities where we felt that libraries would be particularly important in terms of making a difference to families in disadvantaged communities. And so we are proposing to retain the libraries in Mixenden and in Ovenden in North Halifax. So those were the criteria that we used. Now, turning to the future, because John said quite rightly he wanted us to be inspired by the possibility of running the library. And I have to say, the Hipper Home Library or Hipper Home and Lightcliffe is not the only community that's interested in this. There are communities in Mythenroyd, in Ripponden, that we're also in active discussions with, really, about the possibility of them taking over, of a community organisation taking over and running the libraries. And there's a history of that in other parts of the country, in Sheffield, in North Yorkshire, and so on, where with the support of an active community organisation or a parish council or a town council, it is possible to run a library. And harking back to the point that George very properly made about the efficiency and professional standards and so on, Clearly, there are a number of ways in which this could be done. One way in which it could be done is that if there were a group which wanted to take over the running of the library, perhaps by using some of the volunteers that John talked about, the many volunteers that talked about, then it might be possible for such a group to decide that they wanted to enter into some kind of a service level agreement with Calderdale Council to acquire books and perhaps to acquire some professional support to assist them in doing that. Clearly, there's a cost attached to that. And for those communities that have a town council, then it's clearly a lot easier than for communities such as Hipper Home, which don't have that. So I suppose really and I'm conscious of the time, because I'm sure that Councillor Dacre will want to come in as well, and you want to and members will want to ask questions. But I just wanted to say, first of all, that there unfortunately has been good consideration given as to whether or not it was feasible to include Hipper Home Library in the list of a small number of community libraries that we were going to retain alongside our hub libraries in Brighouse and in Halifax and so on. But unfortunately, it didn't prove possible to include it in that list. But as with other communities, Mythenmoy, for example, we're very happy to talk to John and to other people about and to give as much support as we can to a process of thinking about a possible community asset transfer of the building. And although no decision has definitely been taken about that, just to put it on record, we are intending by the end of this year to have an information pack available for any group that would like to explore the option of taking over the building as a community asset transfer, and giving information both in terms of its running costs, the utilities, and all the rest of it, but also our estimates about what the repairs are that we think are needed. And we'd be very happy to talk about whether, if there is interest in using that building for a library, but there might be interest in using it for lots of other things as well, then we'd be very happy to look at that as well. I'll stop there, Chair, if I may.
Okay. Can I make a suggestion? So I've got quite a number of councillors wishing to speak. And then obviously Councillor Dacre wants to come back, and I've just seen Mr. Buck put his hand up as well. So what I want to do, Councillor Dacre, would you be comfortable coming in after we've had a couple of the board members have their comments, and would you mind coming in after that?
No, don't mind that, but you should perhaps ask Mr. Brooke or John to come back in first before the rest.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I will say, if I go Mr. Brooke, and then I'm going to go Peter, and then Roisin, and then Councillor Caffrey, Councillor Smith, Councillor Kavanagh, Councillor Smith, and Councillor Holdsworth. So first, Mr. Brooke.
Well, thank you. I was interested in what Councillor Lynn said, and I can't disagree with many of her points. I thought he was very measured and thoughtful and honest, I think, if I may say. I don't think an asset transfer, I'm not sure we could tackle that. I suppose the model that we initially would think of would be that the council still ran the show, but we offset a lot of the costs by staffing it. But we still need the council support, because I've ordered books from the British Library through Hipper Home Library. Well, I don't think we'd be able to do that if we took it over. I'm not sure we've got the skills. Now, there are a lot of retired librarians or library staff in Hipper Home and Lightcliff, and I've already sounded a few of them out. So we've got that, but I don't think really we could just do it on our own. And I do understand, I sympathise with Calderdale Council, because I used to live in Cleckheaton, and Spemborough Council, it was a municipal borough, just like Brighouse, had one library. It's near the grammar school I went to, Whitcliffe Mount. Brighouse had branch libraries all over the place. And I can see the problem that Calderdale inherited a monumental number of libraries, and town halls, of course, they did as well. And that, I can sympathise with that. But I just think the population of Hipper Home, it must be 18,000, 20,000, Hipper Home and Lightcliff. George, I'm guessing at that. I don't know. Possibly not that many. But I think we could support this. But Jenny, if I may call you Jenny, I don't think we could take it on completely on our own. But I think we could generate some income, and we could generate a lot of community. You know, I know a number of community groups that would jump at the chance, a book club, for example. And the History Society, we've 140 members in the History Society. You know, there's tremendous support, but I know like Cliff and Hipperham's classed as middle class, and I know we've all got books of our own and so on. And I have every sympathy with supporting the more deprived communities. There's no ill feeling towards that decision at all. I can understand the problems, but I just think it's worth having a meeting and giving it a go. But thanks anyway. Thanks for listening to me, by the way. You've been very kind, all of you.
We all greatly appreciate you coming and your contributions thus far. Right, I'm going to go through some of the board members. So I'm going to go Councillor Caffrey next, if that's okay. Peter, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Some of mine are actually questions for anybody to answer, really. I'm assuming that the idea of this is to save money rather than get capital receipt. Am I right in thinking that, Jenny? Yeah. I'm just a bit surprised that there seems to be a lack of an appetite to do an asset transfer, because I would have thought that was probably the way forward. But anyway, that's for another day. I'm just wondering, I've never been in Hipperham Library, to be honest with you. I don't know how big it is. So is it something that can be used for other things apart from a library or as a library as well? Or is it too small for some of the groups that Mr. Clark's mentioned, for example? Could they use it for meetings and things like that? In terms of the revenue, what I get the idea that if it wasn't staffed, then it would probably just break even as a library if it was run voluntarily. Is that about right? But I mean, I think really you need to put a business case together to show that it does work in another ownership. I mean, closing libraries, I don't like closing libraries either, and I'd like to stay with the people of Hipperham. And as Mr. Clark said, technically it belongs to people of Hipperham anyway, because it's a public asset. But I can see the risks of it. I mean, books aren't cheap, and if you've got to run a library, you've got to replace them and change them and repair them. And so I could, if there was a business case for running it as an asset transfer, I'd be supporting it. But I've really got more questions than answers, really. Thanks, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Lynn, do you want to come back on that, or shall we actually? What I might do is I might just move through the order paper quickly and just go for Councillor Kavanagh next, and then kind of have Councillor Dacre and Councillor Lynn come back then, and then I'll have Councillor Smith and Councillor Holdsworth.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment. John, even though you say you're apolitical, I would like to claim you as our own because you do so much in the community. So thank you for your continuing public service.
Right. Oh, thank you.
But I just wanted to reassure you. So I'm a councillor in Ludford, which includes Mythe Royd, and we've been working with Hebden Royd Town councillors around saving that service. So we've had some really interesting meetings with some libraries in Sheffield, which they already transferred their libraries from the council to the community. And the way that they've done it is they've got a head librarian who works in Sheffield Central Library, and he provides ongoing support to all of the volunteer-led libraries. Right. So he gives support around how to order books. He gives support around, all of the systems that exist. So they've created this amazing team of volunteers. So someone is the admin volunteer, someone is the welcoming somebody in. He's trained them all up, and then they work on a volunteer rota. And he has a volunteer meeting every month where he brings together all the volunteer libraries from across Sheffield, gives them support, gives them networking opportunities. He also, really interestingly, one of the women who runs the library, who was on a call, said since the community took it over, and this is, I don't mean to denigrate council-run libraries in any way, but she said it's totally brought the place to life because they can actually do a lot more than what the council used to do. So they've opened it up to brand new groups. They've got loads of activities going on there. They do fundraising so that they can buy their own books. They've got a service level agreement so that they can get books from the council. She just talks about it very passionately as being an actual asset to the community rather than something that's gone, you know, it's a shame that the council have run it. She just really promoted it. And tomorrow we're meeting that head librarian in a meeting in the morning, and he's going to give us some more practical advice, because that's what we're looking to do in Mythenroyd. So what I would say is nobody in this group would think that libraries are bad. It's more about the fact that the council can't afford it. So let's have a solution. And I think it could be a really good opportunity for your library to actually think through what are the other things you want to run. So for example, in Mythenroyd Library, it's really just a room with books in, but we want it to be a wider service. We want stuff for young people. We want groups going on. So that's what we're actually looking at. How can we take what exists and actually make it better so it's a service for the wider community?
Good.
Yeah.
Good
That's
point.
That's really a really good point and well taken. At this point, I'm going to go to Councillor Dacre, and then I'm going to go back to board members for questions, if that's okay. Sylvia?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I'll try and deal with some of the points that have been raised that haven't already been covered. The first one I'd just like to touch on is that an equality impact assessment was certainly carried out in relation to all of the library service as a whole, and that can be made available. In terms of a review of running a comprehensive and efficient library service following the closures that are likely to take place, well, that's part of the equality impact assessment, but also, I mean, Calderdale have already been quite forward thinking about this. I think you'll all know, or at least I hope you know, that there's an online facility and that there is a delivery facility for residents. And certainly it was interesting, John, that you spoke about getting books from the British Library, because my partner is just about to try to find out whether the library service is able to, Calderdale Library Service is able to do that on an online basis, because he wants a library transfer, and he wants to find out whether that's possible. So I think Calderdale has thought about how it's going to run its library services in a new era, and that's been quite a comprehensive consideration. In relation to scoring criteria, well, I think sorry to be a bit boring, but going back to the Future Council paper, the phase 2 paper, that both has a little section on page 6 about HIPAA Home and the considerations for HIPAA Home, but also on page 8, it refers to some of the criteria that they were using. And one of those criteria, which is the one really that I suppose is the real problem here for HIPAA Home, it's the maintenance liabilities and the refurbishment, which is covered in more detail on page 6. And that's the real problem, because in theory, it might be possible to see that if it perhaps was staffed by volunteers, you might just about manage to cover the running costs of the building with, but what you couldn't do was pay for the refurbishment, and that's in the region of £220,000. The council hasn't got it, and of course the difficulty is for anybody who is looking at an asset transfer is that they would have to think about how they were going to resolve that issue as well. So it's very, very unfortunate for HIPAA Home, and part of the other problem HIPAA Home suffers from is that, if you want to call it that, is because it's a nice old building, it's not accessible. And I think, as I recall, it's even got steps to get onto the ground floor. And then if you want to get to the library, you're upstairs or you need a lift. So it's got some real problems, and the council can't afford to solve those. So that's really why it's not possible for the council to keep it on at all. And just in relation to that, Councillor Caffrey asked about whether the idea was to save money or to get capital receipts. Well, in fact, you will see again on page 9 of the phase 2 report, it refers to the fact that buildings if they're not asset transferred to the community, they will be sold, and the asset transfer, the capital receipts will be put aside for reinvestment in the remaining libraries. So I think there was one more point I wanted to make. Yeah, so unfortunately, the idea that you had, John, that we could own it and you could run it just isn't feasible in this particular case, and it is a shame. So I think those are all the points I wanted to address just at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, right, I've got Councillor Smith, Councillor Holdsworth and Councillor Robinson, and then I'm going to come back to whichever one of Sylvia or Jenny I make eye contact with first, or one of the officers. I see Jenny running away. Councillor Smith.
Thank you for putting forward your case for the library. I think it was passionate and interesting. Part of my question was around linking up with the main library, which has been answered by Roisin. So that, because on the website that George directed us to, it's quite interesting to look at the different models. I wanted to ask, I don't know if it's Councillor Lynn or Councillor Dacre, but when we're looking at the asset, if we were looking at an asset transfer, which I understand why you're reluctant to, would you be looking at passing on the shops, the units underneath, the retail units underneath, along with the library, or would that be something that's kept quite separate?
Was that to Jenny, that question about passing on the shops, Audrey?
Yeah, Jenny, or yeah, I think.
Or Sylvia, yeah.
Chair, I'm happy to respond just to that point from Councillor Smith. A final decision hasn't been taken yet, but the logical thing would seem to be to attempt to look at an asset transfer which would include the shop units, because that would be, at the very least, that would be an income generator, as Councillor Robinson has said. So we haven't taken a final decision about that, and we're still kind of like trying to look at that. But it seems as though it would be logical, because the building does kind of like sit together, really. So it would seem now, so that in a sense means that the council is foregoing income from those units, but on the other hand, it's also foregoing the liability of looking after what is quite a challenging building. So as I say, we haven't come to a final decision yet, but our thinking at the moment is that if a group comes forward that can really add value and do something that's a benefit to the community, very much along the lines that Mr. Brooke was talking about, then it would seem to be logical to include the whole building, because that then at least gives a bit of a start in terms of some income generating potential for the building.
Thank you.
Okay. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go Councillor Holdsworth and then Councillor Robinson, and as I say, then one of the cabinet members present. So, Councillor Holdsworth.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. One of the criteria that was indicated was the usage of Hipper Home Library at roughly 13,000 people a year. Now, I understand the reasons for wanting to keep Mixenden and Ovenden libraries, I think, open because they're in deprived areas. What I wonder is the usage percentage of the population for those two libraries in terms of the criteria.
Do we know that number offhand? Sylvia, I'm looking in your direction. Oh.
Can I just come in, Chair? I'm sorry, I'm not able to give you that offhand, but I wonder if you might. We do have our Head of Public Services on the call, Zora, and I don't know whether you might want to see if Zora would be able to provide the
thank you.
Figures there. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have those to hand.
Zora?
So which libraries was it, Councillor?
Ovenden and Mixenden.
Right, I can find them while we're on the line, if that's okay, because I will have them in my email somewhere.
So what we'll do, we'll get Councillor Robinson's question, and then I'll check to see whether we'll get a comeback from one of the cabinet members, and then I'll come back to you, Zora. So I'll give you I'll give you enough time to escape. Sorry, to find the answer. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think in a nutshell, we want to make progress here. We want to keep the library service, a library service of sorts in the ward. I'd like to ultimately, hopefully, I'd love to have a proposal on the table here, a recommendation of how we can do that. If we can't achieve that, then we might just have to take it away, and we're at the Cabinet's mercy when it comes to how we're going to run the library in the future. But I'd just like to make 2 quick points at this stage. I actually dispute in the report. It says that to upgrade the furniture, fittings, and a replacement lift, it says the cost would be £220,000. Now that's a November report. In October, I've got a letter from the Cabinet member which says that the cost for the same replacement is actually £150,000. Now that is a £70,000 discrepancy in a month. So I am quite concerned. I'd just like to ask, what is that discrepancy in that figure? So again, a letter dated the 13th of October to refurb the library, £150,000. In the November report, it's £220,000. I'd just like to ask, what is that discrepancy for? So yeah, sorry.
No.
In terms of that exact number, I don't expect a Cabinet member to come with the exact estimates at this meeting tonight. While I think it is an open question, I think certainly part of whatever resolution we come to at the end of this discussion could be to ask Cabinet to go back and just double check those figures and kind of pass on a bit of a summary of the discussion that we've had.
You can't see that. I've got it on my phone.
So I'm not going to say, I don't think anyone can necessarily look at all of the quotes and how those figures have been reached from this discussion. So what I would say is, if there's a debate about the discussion, and I think part of, and I don't want to preempt any final decision, but I suspect part of what we're going to do is we're going to ask Cabinet to go away and kind of work up potential business cases either way. And in that case, I think we'd have to look at those numbers again. But I think, kind of short of doing that, I don't think it's fair for us to say, is the figure in the paper or the figure in the Cabinet report correct? So I don't expect anyone to answer that. Zola, moving back.
Could I move to, sorry, Chair, could I move to my second submission? Because that was just one question. Yeah, sorry, Chair. Yeah, I'm plus as well, Councillor Fenton-Glynn. That approach that you've outlined, I think that is a very fair recommendation to make in this meeting. The second point that I'd also like to incorporate into a recommendation, I'm very concerned about the challenge, a potential judicial review challenge to this decision. And the reason why, just to outline, I was actually called by a lawyer on Monday who actually has been involved in challenging library closures. And the reason why this decision could actually be subject to legal challenge in a judicial review is because the report seems to outline, and this is why I asked the question earlier, but I didn't get anything from the consultation point, but the report seems to outline that a consultation is going to take place with service users after this decision has taken place. And there's also another point here, that an equality impact assessment must be taken alongside the decision because as per the Equalities Act. And I've got cases, I've got evidence, which there was a case in 2018, Crown and Northamptonshire County Council, where the council proposed to close 21 libraries and the council's decision was quashed by the High Court, and it was quashed because the council didn't undertake an impact assessment as per the Equalities Act on the protected groups. And the second point is they failed to carry out a consultation process. And I would also add that this would not only trigger a judicial review, but it could also trigger a complaint to the DCMS. It's very serious stuff, is this. We need to make sure that the rationale behind the decision is concrete. So that's why I'm asking as well, Chair, as quite rightly, I think those recommendations that you outlined about the business case was very positive. I would also like to ask as part of those recommendations, because obviously we have got a call in coming very soon on this topic, please could we ask our legal officers to look and to investigate and to review the legal basis of the decision-making process. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I mean, Northamptonshire obviously famous for being the first council to go bankrupt. So one would hope that we're running a better ship than they were.
Chair, that's unfair because the judge actually mentioned in her speech that financial issues is not an excuse not to follow due process. I just want to mention that.
Sorry, I was being facetious, George. I know it's unlike me. Zola, do you have the numbers just to answer Councillor? I can't remember if it's Councillor Holdsworth or Councillor Smith. Sorry, the specific point about the library usage when you look at Ovenden and Mixenden compared to Hipperholm in terms of the percentage of the population.
It was me, Chair. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Holdsworth.
Oh yeah. So in terms of the usage figures, then, first of all, just to correct, and I may have misheard Councillor Holdsworth, and if I did, I apologise. But the usage figure at Hipperholm is actually just below 7,000. Mixenden 6,000, Beechwood 10,000, and of course, members will be aware that we don't have a library in Ovenden. But I'd also just like to make a couple of other points, Chair, as well, if I can, just in response to Councillor Robinson. And I think, my mind is definitely failing as I'm getting older. But I recall going to Place Scrutiny, and it must be at least 18 months ago now, when we first started talking about the potential closure of some libraries. So this isn't something which we've just, come up with overnight. It's been something which we've been talking about for 18 months now and trying to find cost-effective solutions to the issues and the challenges that the council's facing. In terms of Calderdale, I think we've done a fantastic job. For a borough the size of Calderdale, we've got 20 libraries, and that's phenomenal that the council's been able to maintain 20 libraries for the length of time that it has. And it's probably much better than most of the other councils, certainly, in the surrounding areas. And I think we need to be proud of that. But of course, with that comes a cost, and with that come the overheads, and with that come the challenges, because we get used to having that level of service. And I think it's fair to say that, our libraries are valued. They're valued as they're having a place within a particular location, and they're valued because of the service that they use. And none of us, either me as the director or certainly any of our cabinet members, would want to actually see them close. But unfortunately, we find ourselves in a position where the budget challenges for what are largely discretionary services are insurmountable, and we need to take some really difficult and really challenging decisions. So that's why we find ourselves where we are. And what we're trying to do is to actually look at a fair and equitable way of reviewing our library services across the whole of the borough, so that each of our areas, as far as possible, has access to a library service. We welcome the opportunity to work with our communities and voluntary sector. We welcome the opportunity for community asset transfers where we can make them happen. And we will work with community groups really constructively to try and bring that about. We've also got support from the Voluntary Sector Alliance, who want to work and again will support community groups to give them that support and those structures to help make that happen. So, and I think what I've heard from Mr. Brook today is really positive, and it's actually that partnership working that I think can actually deliver some quite innovative solutions to our library service. But the reality is we do have to make some really tough decisions. And that's where we find ourselves. So where we can work and find those solutions, we'd be delighted to actually do it and to actually work in collaboration and work in partnership to make that happen. But where we can't do it, then I'm afraid we do have to take some very difficult decisions and look at closures. And then finally, and I think it was Councillor Robinson mentioned the DCMS. Well, yes, the DCMS are aware of what we're doing. And the reality is that to meet the statutory requirement for a library in Calderdale, we could probably have one library in Halifax, and that's something that we don't want to go down to that level. We're not here to do the box ticking in terms of that statutory exercise. What we want to try and see is provision and coverage across the whole of the borough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Right. So in terms of, can I just check with Mike what decision we have to come up with, like what options we have at this stage, just in terms of decisions that we can take as a board? If you're in the meeting, Mike.
I am in the meeting, Chair. On a petition, you may actually make any recommendation you choose. There are no constraints on petitions, unlike the next item. So you can choose to make recommendations to Cabinet if you wish, or to the Director, I guess.
Could we make a recommendation that Cabinet look at the case for an asset transfer and just get a clear idea of what that would involve? Jenny, sorry, did you want to come in? Councillor, then you're muted.
I did, and I apologise for not using the chat. I just wanted to say that in a way, the position that we've got at the moment, and actually Councillor Robinson is aware of this, is that we've taken a decision, and obviously that's already been taken and already been released for implementation. That we are proposing to close a number of our libraries in Calderdale, and unfortunately, the one in Hipperholme is one such library, and we would anticipate that will close in the next financial year. What we have also done, and we've already started on that, is we're working with colleagues in CAFM, the Community Asset Facilities Management section of the council, to prepare information packs, giving all the information and inviting organisations who would like to talk to us with, as the Director has mentioned, the support of someone from the VSI Alliance, the Voluntary Sector Alliance, to help look at what might be involved. And happily learning from the experience of places like Sheffield, North Yorkshire and others, we'd be happy to do as much as we could to support any group that wanted to go down the community asset transfer route. So in a sense, there's no need. I mean, you can make a recommendation if you want, but we're already doing that. We've already said that we're very happy to work with any organisation. Now, you'll appreciate that because there are a number of such buildings, it is and because our particular facilities management section is also very busy with lots of other work, including working out where the sites are going to be for people to get rapid flow testing and all sorts of things like that. They've got an awful lot on their plate, but we've got a target by the turn of the year when we hope to have these information packs there. So yes, you can make that recommendation if you like, but all I would say to members is that we are already committed to doing that. And just if I could just say to John, that yeah, we will be very happy to work, and I hope you've got the impression that we'll be very happy to work in partnership with yourselves to try and see, is there a way in which we could make this work? And I do understand that it's the concept of taking on a building and making it a business case for a community asset transfer, to be handing over a building. Obviously, you're handing over an asset, and therefore you've got to be sure that it could work in the new arrangement. As I say, we're happy to work alongside yourselves and anybody else that you want, any other groups you want to draw in. And as I say, the VSI Alliance will be prepared to support you in terms of help with setting up new structures or whatever it might be in order to do that. And what we're looking for is an expression and we've said this to all of the groups, including the one that Councillor Kavanagh is involved with, that what we would like, if people are interested in an asset transfer, then what we would like is in the first 3 months of next year to work on deciding what your structure might be, deciding what your business case might be. It doesn't have to be all I's dotted and T's crossed, but put us in an expression of interest by the turn of the year. Because if we don't get those expressions of interest in within a few months, then as Councillor Dacre has quite correctly said, because of the pressures on the council, we will then have to market the buildings, including the one in Hipperholm. I hope that helps kind of like set the scene. Thank you.
Okay, great. What else? Oh, hang on.
Could I just ask one question?
Hang on.
Sorry.
I've got a couple of people lined up who wanted just to come in and quickly comment. So I had Councillor Bellinger, who I understand wants to be on this committee because we're the best. Councillor Kavanagh, and then Councillor Young. And then was that you, Peter? Sorry, I couldn't see you at the time that just asked to ask a question.
It was John.
No, it was me.
Oh, sorry, John, I beg your pardon.
Yes.
Sorry.
All I want to ask is a question, no points, just a question.
Yeah, no worries. So I thought you were Councillor Caffrey, sorry.
Ooh. Gosh, being upgraded.
My apologies to you.
It just had that sound to you, Peter. I'm sorry, because I was looking at the chat, I couldn't see you. Sorry, go ahead.
Is that me, Chair, or Peter, you wanting to go?
No, I want to say John first. And then,
all right.
then
Just for clarification, to go back to my colleagues, as it were, does an asset transfer mean that the building is and the contents and the furniture is handed over to a group of trustees or what have you? So the council simply give the bricks and mortar to the group, do they? Is that it, Jenny? Councillor.
Yeah, yes, and you can find information on the website about it. We have to have a community asset transfer policy. Now, it should be what I should say, John, is that before we dispose of assets which are public assets, we need to be convinced that there's a business case that that the group to which it's being handed over has got some prospect of being able to maintain that building for public, and also that it's going to add value. So it's going to be doing something of genuine benefit to the community. So you can't just say, well, we want to take it over and all we want to do is run a commercial bingo hall or something. It's got to be of community benefit. So that's the situation. And there have been examples of community asset transfers done in Calderdale before, and some of them have been quite successful.
Yeah, the town hall in my ward of Hebden Bridge is quite a good example of a time when that's been made.
Yes.
Right, I'm going to go down the list. So I had Councillor Bellinger.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question, I've heard a lot about the usage of these libraries, the footfall usage of these libraries, but it's the type of usage that we're not actually hearing. I mean, how many people are actually borrowing books? What percentage of people are borrowing books? What percentage of people are actually using the IT equipment? What percentage of people are using the libraries as a community meeting place? And if it's a case of that books are no longer being borrowed from our libraries, the footfall's not there for that, then is there any way that we can look at evolving with these buildings and making them more into community hubs instead, where there's a possibility of maybe more IT equipment going into these places to encourage more people to go in and use them? Now, I know you're saying that that's probably not going to generate income, but if places are designed like that, then there's more potential for people to actually hire those venues as well for other issues, for other events, rather than them being full of books if books are not actually being borrowed anymore. So it's just an idea. It's more of a commercially minded thinking, really, on what we can do with our libraries in future.
I think we had a meeting where we had all those stats available. I think that meeting about 18 months ago that Zora was speaking about, and I think Regan suggested coffee shops in libraries at the time, if I remember correctly. So I think we do have those numbers. I'm not going to ask Zora to just bring them to hand straight away unless she has them. Do you have them?
I can circulate them again, but I thought they were circulated again as part of the Future Council Phase 2 discussions that took place about a month ago. But
yeah, I think they were. If you could circulate them just to the panel members and to Councillor Bellinger, because they are quite useful and they do give quite a good basis kind of for background for some of these discussions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry to be annoying.
No, that's fine. We'll do that tomorrow morning if that's okay, Councillor.
That'd be perfect. And then I'm going to go for Councillor Kavanagh next, and then Councillor Young, and then I'm going to see if we can kind of move on with the chat to so that I can let George take over the chair again. So, Councillor Kavanagh.
Yeah, I wonder if Zora, could you say a little bit more about the equality impact assessment on the libraries? Just because there seems to be a lot of questions around that, so I think it'd just be good for you to share what's been done and any.
So, I mean, the equality impact assessments follow a standard format, as you'll be aware of, and what we look at are, who uses the library, what the impact is on different people that might use the library. And we look at that impact across each of the protected characteristics and whether or not that might be a negative impact, and all of those things are taken into consideration. And whenever we're making, any sort of, strategic policy change or looking at ceasing or making a significant change to one of our services, we will always, as a matter of course, have to carry out an equality impact assessment. So we have done that for the library service. And again, I'm more than happy to circulate that to members if you'd actually like to see the document itself.
Okay, thanks for that. And then Councillor Young.
Thank you, Josh. I think this petition, what we do with petitions normally, we just note the petitions, but I think we can make a strong case, and Jenny has already confirmed that they do, that we should encourage all of our small libraries to become community hubs and be asset transferred to their own communities. I think we make that case to the Cabinet. They're obviously going to agree anyway, because that's their policy. But I think it would help to encourage, because it could be 8 possible small libraries going to have to close because of the unsustainable and costing too much money, and we haven't got the money to sustain them. So. But we should encourage all the small libraries to be asset transferred to their own communities. I think that as a recommendation.
Insofar as that's possible, I think we should, kind of encourage the council to continue working with available partners, or some words to that effect, if that's possible. I think probably at this point we've had as much discussion as we can kind of profitably have on this. Can I just thank George and John for the presentation that they made of the petition? I think actually it was presented in a really good faith way, and actually we've had quite a useful discussion out of that. As I do hope that we can kind of continue to have this conversation, and hopefully you'll be back in a year talking about how good a job you did with the asset transfer of the building. So yeah. Thank you all very much.
I'm going to go now, Councillor Fenton, but Josh, may I just say thank you. The courtesy of which have been received and the way people have listened and the general feeling of the meeting, I have nothing but praise. So I'm very grateful. Thanks all of you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, John. Really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye. Cheers.
Cheers. Now, George, you're chairing the next bit, so let's hope we can all be as amicable on the planning matter. Over to you.
Sorry, I believe Councillor Young had a recommendation on the table.
Oh, sorry, yeah. But I think it was essentially to note the petition, but also to support that the council continues to work towards kind of supporting asset transfers, and I believe Councillor Caffrey has offered to second that. So now we have a seconded proposal. Unless Peter would like to speak on it, I think we can probably vote on whether we support that proposal. So I'm going to ask all those in favour. Sorry, I'm Chair, I'm not supposed to vote, excuse me. All those against? Any abstentions? Right, we are.
Perfect.
Okay,
Right.
cross-party support. Next, moving on. George, you're in charge.
Thank you, Councillor Fensington, for taking the chair. Greatly appreciate it. And thank you, members, for that discussion. I think it was a fruitful discussion there. Right, on to item number 5, land disposal. Can I please bring in the, is it Councillor Baker? Are you going, oh no, it's, sorry, who's called, Councillor Holdsworth. Are you speaking first on this?
No, Councillor Baker and Councillor Bellinger are going first, and then I'm going to speak last as a member of the scrutiny panel. Thank you, Chair.
Right, no problem. In that case, I'll hand over to Councillor Baker. Welcome to the Place Scrutiny panel, Councillor Baker. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you,
Over
members.
to you.
Yeah, so thanks everyone. So I guess I'll just start by explaining why I called this in and why I think it's something that we need to have a bit of a discussion about. And I hope really from it, it hopes to focus some of our attention on where we're at with affordable housing in the borough at the moment. And hopefully the end result of that will be that there's more affordable houses built in Calderdale, because I'm pretty sure everyone in this call, regardless of political party or what organisation you're from, all recognises the need that we do need more affordable housing in Calderdale, and what a vital aspect that is of our anti-poverty plan in order to make homes affordable for people to live in, and how we can do that. And over the years, you know, with housing costs rising, with house prices rising, with a lack of housing available, housing costs have been taken up an increasing proportion of people's income. We know that there's, you know, generation rent that haven't been able to get onto the property ladder, and we know that many people struggle to buy their first home, and that their rent and housing costs represent a significant chunk of people's income. So that is something we're all agreed on. So the reason I've called this particular site in is when I was reading through the cabinet papers, I was aware of the Beach Hill development, and I thought this is an excellent development. It is the local authority working with a social housing provider, and we're regenerating land from its former use to turn it into housing. So that's exactly what we want to see, you know, housing, new housing in locations which is close to amenities. We're not building on any natural habitats or greenbelt land. It is exactly the sort of development that we want to see coming forward. And so the only bit I got a bit disappointed on was, as I was reading down the cabinet paper on it, I saw that there was section 2.3 on the cabinet paper, and I'll just read that out quickly. It says, Together Housing has requested that the council does not secure the provision of affordable housing on the site by inserting appropriate provisions in the transfer documents, as this will reduce the value of properties constructed on the site by up to 25% and will limit Together Housing's ability to raise future development funding through commercial mortgages. It says instead, Together Housing is proposing that the housing on the site will be provided in accordance with the CTHIP, which I understand is a strategic partnership we've got with Together, which permits the provision of a range of tenures, including social rent, shared ownership, outright sale, without stipulating the exact type of properties within that range that would be provided on site. So the reasons I thought that was a bit disappointed is, one, the council had a housing strategy that I think ran up to 2017 that stipulated 20% of affordable housing on developments, I think over 15 units. That was in the housing strategy. And the local plan that we've just submitted also says that we would need about 20% of new housing on larger sites to be affordable to meet the needs. And the National Policy Planning Framework says 10% kind of minimum on those kind of sites. And this is a real problem for us in Calderdale, because if you look at the council's key performance indicators, the numbers of affordable housing is actually something that we haven't been hitting. We are one of the worst performing boroughs, unfortunately, not just, you know, the boroughs in the north, but across the whole country in terms of the number of affordable homes being built. I think if you look last year at the target, and if you just bear with me, I'll bring it up. The target was 153 to get the green target. Amber was 100. We only managed to build 61 affordable homes. So we rated ourselves red on our own RAG rating as to what we do. And if you look at that target's 153. But in the local plan that we've submitted, there's the strategic housing needs assessment. And that strategic housing needs assessment says you actually need to be building 500 a year for the next 5 years, affordable homes, in order to meet what we have identified is the need for affordable homes. So our own target of what, you know, is actually out and doesn't align with what we said is needed in our strategic housing needs assessment. So not only are we missing our target and we're RAG rated on our target, but our target is actually, even if we were to meet it, it wouldn't actually meet what we're saying elsewhere in the authority is what is needed to meet the needs of residents. So I guess then I was so disappointed to then see this cabinet paper come forward and see that we're removing the requirement for those affordable houses. So I thought it was something needed to look at more. I want to understand why that's being taken out. And I guess what I'd hope from the meeting is perhaps, you know, rather than just saying that there's not going to be affordable housing or we're removing the requirement, that actually we can work with together and try and get some affordable housing on the site is what I want to come out of this. I don't, you know, I'm not here to like throw stones or attack things. I just want that additional affordable housing in the borough. So that's why I called this decision in. And hopefully to have some explanation on that. I'm aware with the strategic partnership, it was, you know, that partnership was signed a few years ago and it talked about, I think, around 500 houses being built over the lifespan of it. So this would be 105 of those houses. So maybe you're going to tell me tonight that all the other houses being built on it and they're in the pipeline are all going to be affordable and therefore that's why they aren't on this site or something like that. But I really kind of want to have some answers to some of this really and kickstart a bit of a discussion. And hopefully another thing that will come out of it is we have a look at our housing strategy, come up with a plan as to how we build those affordable houses we've identified in the local plan are going to be needed in the borough. So thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. May I hand over to Councillor Bellinger, please? Welcome to the panel, Councillor Bellinger. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Baker's covered most of things there, to be quite honest. However, my slant comes more from a commercial side on this as well, where I think really it's quite pertinent to our current situation that we're in financially at the moment. And we've basically missed out on two opportunities here with this land. One of which is obviously the increase of affordable housing. But the main one to me is with regards to the commercialisation opportunity. A commercialisation opportunity which we could have really sort of like taken hold of with our new development company, Weave, which we've now set up in Calderdale Council, which have, at the moment, I think we've got 3 sites in the pipeline. Councillor Caffrey will back me up on this because Councillor Caffrey is on the board of directors as well to the Weave Development Company. And this is our way of being able to take on board developments like this, build them for ourselves and generate income for ourselves as well as an authority. With development opportunities, I mean, what we've done in this report, it basically said that Together Housing will get these sites and each plot will make £5,000 per plot, which is £255,000 out of the whole 51 plots on this site. Now, as an authority, if we actually built them ourselves, when you develop a property, you basically break it down into 3s. A third is your land cost, a third is your build cost, and a third is what you make at the end, your profit that you make at the end. Now, if we'd done this ourselves, we could be looking in the region of about £4.8 million profit from this, which is a hell of a lot more than £255,000, you know, if we'd have built these properties ourselves. So this is, the worrying thing is that we've actually tied ourselves in really to an agreement with Together Housing, which is the Calderdale Together Housing Investment Partnership, where really Together Housing are taking the cream of the crop here by taking these sites off us and not us getting in there first and taking this opportunity by the reins and making, you know, a financial investment and income for ourselves as an authority. And it's there, it's actually in the report as well, 2.4, Together Housing has additionally proposed that the standard approach to is adopted for all council-owned sites, that it is transferred pursuant to the CTHIP agreement, so the transfer documents for each site oblige Together Housing to provide housing on the site in accordance with the terms of the CTHIP agreement, rather than specifying that affordable housing is provided on the site. So we're tied in, and I think it's about time that we actually looked and relinquished our ties with Together Housing. So at the end of the day, we can actually start to benefit as an authority from what's out there and not other housing associations. So that's my part on this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bellinger. And over to Councillor Holdsworth.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got a question really, as well as a point to make. And it's looking at point 2.3 in the report. And that's to say, why will affordable housing reduce the value of properties on the site by 25% when social rent, shared ownership and outright sales won't? I can't quite see the distinction, particularly as a national target. We are supposed to provide 10% of affordable housing. And my second point is to pick up on something that Councillor Bellinger alluded to. What contract do we have as an authority with Together Housing where it seems that they benefit financially far more than Calderdale Metropolitan Borough Council and its residents do? And I wonder what opportunities there are to look at other housing association providers that we could perhaps develop a more beneficial contract with. Are there other housing associations we could work with? It just seems to me that the people at the end of the day who are losing out on this are exactly the people that you would think Calderdale Metropolitan Borough Council would be wanting to support. And that is people who are not in an easy position, not readily able to get onto the property ladder, but would benefit from affordable housing. And yet the partner that the council has gone in with seems to be trying very, very hard to cut those people out. And that seems to me morally repugnant. It does seem absolutely appalling. So I'd welcome some comments on that and see why we're not trying to support the very people who need support in our borough. Thank you.
No problem at all. Thank you, Councillor Holdsworth. May I at this point please pass on to Cabinet members?
Thank you, George. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, over to you, Councillor Patience.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, just to challenge Councillor, but first of all, I mean, thank you. I think it's really good that it's come here in the first instance, so we have the opportunity to do a bit of myth dispelling and just have a broader discussion about our aspirations. You mentioned Weave there, Councillor Bellinger, and you're totally right. I think what Weave does and its aspirations to build is a really important wider part of the puzzle. And I know that Councillor Caffrey has a lot of interest in that in particular and really be able to engage in this discussion, especially with his history with Beech Hill as well. So I welcome some of those comments going forward. I think what I want to reflect on, though, is the idea that we could have done this ourselves. I think we need to reflect on what that site was like, really, in the first instance. You know, there was three massive high-rises there that were sitting there for quite some time doing nothing, a bit of a blot on the landscape. And also just generally about the site, it was a contaminated depot, and in no way was it what you would call prime real estate. I don't think for 1 minute we would have got the receipts that anyone is claiming for. I think potentially that site, now having had the investment that has been put into it, could be what you might consider an exemplar site. I mean, I think it was one of the largest asbestos removal activities in the country at the time. I think it cost Together Housing £8 million. So I think it's just worth dwelling on that for a minute. in terms of where we are at the moment and the difficult decisions we're having to make as an authority, that we could have done that on our own. I think looking back at the partnership that's been set up for a couple of years now, to not forget Beech Hill's been a long time in the making, and I'm really glad that Councillor Lynn stayed on the line here as a ward councillor. She's been particularly invested and interested in this along the way and has put an awful lot of work into this, and George from Together Housing is also on the line, so welcome some of their comments going forward. It's a very equal board. It's a very 50-50 board, and we do have the power of veto a lot of the time, so it's worthwhile reflecting on the fact that nothing's being pushed past us. We're not being pushed blindly into any decisions. I think also as well, it's worth remembering that Beech Hill is all affordable housing. It was agreed by the project board. It was also agreed by the broader partnership in terms of residents. Councillor Lynn and the other ward councillors have been incredibly supportive of the project along the way and really integral to sort of pushing it forward. I think what we want to avoid though is, how would you say it? I guess sort of referring to affordable housing as part of the land transfer in its totality. I think that would restrict the amount of funding we could borrow on the back of new homes. Clearly, this is an opportunity to do some wider work in terms of what we want to do in terms of affordable homes. And clearly, we've gone 10% above what the National Policy Framework has suggested as well, and that is still very much an ambition. So I think what we want to do is make sure that we have the flexibility to have sites all across the piece, which is what the paper was about, really, to make sure that some of those other places can subsidise this. Let's not forget 100 of these spaces are for affordable rent, and that's as part of the key choice process. Now, I'm not going to go into that because that's not my speciality, but I'm sure Heidi can pick up what the key choice process is all about later. The partnership has been doing a lot of work as well. They're also on site at Abbey Park, which has got 63 affordable properties and 23 mixed ownership as well. So there is other work happening out there. So in terms of going forward, I think it's a difficult one, really. It doesn't need to be a difficult one. I think it's a site that needs to go forward. Clearly, we couldn't have done it on our own. Clearly, the partnership is there in place to have made this happen and to get where we are. We've provided the chops in terms of being able to go to Wicker and secure some of the funding that we've needed to make sure that we're able to move forward with the plan. It's a miracle it ever happened, really, and I'm sure Councillor Lynn will sort of speak a little bit more on that. It's an absolute miracle. So to get it over the line is fantastic. And I know the residents there, in terms of the renters and what's going to happen in phase 2, have been with it all along the way. So I kind of dispute the fact that this might be considered morally repugnant. I think it's got everyone's best interests in mind. It's made sure it's consulted right from the start. It's made sure it's involved the police station nearby, the local school, who've all been very much a part of the process from where we were at the start. I mean, what is it, 10, 12 years in the process, and we're very nearly on site in terms of, I think it'll be early January. But I mean,
sorry, Councillor Pate, I don't wish to rush you. I know we've got Councillor Lynn also wishing to flip in as well. Could we maybe come to conclusions? If I don't want to sound rude.
Yeah, I was just going to make one more point, Chair. That's all. And just to answer the broader question, really, about working with other RPs or registered providers, that's already happening. I mean, we've delivered with the Community Land Trust a number of later lives bungalows in Walsden. We work with Horton Housing. There are other partnerships that exist that we do deliver smaller scale housing schemes with. So that is very much there. I won't go on because I do want to give Councillor Lynn a chance to speak, but happy to pick up questions in a bit. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Councillor. Sorry, I don't like intervening there.
No, you did right.
Councillor Lynn.
Thank you very much, Chair, for letting me speak. I got on the council in 2012, and one of the things that residents in the Beech Hill estate, which has about 70 homes, said, when are we ever going to get our homes done up, and what on earth's happening about those empty tower blocks, which had been empty by then, had been empty for 10 or 12 years. And it was probably in the October of that year that we set up a Beach Hill project board that's been working ever since, and George was really involved in that. It's been working ever since to try to get a solution. What drives me is I wanted to see some improvement to the existing Beach Hill estate, but more than that, I spend a lot of my time in my councillor surgeries and that dealing with people who are desperate for homes to rent. There's a real shortage of that. And in a way, one of the things which has happened with the Beach Hill site, and I've been on the board, that project board, ever since, when, as Scott quite correctly says, we went for several years when it was just backwards and forwards. We couldn't afford to bring the tower blocks down. At one stage, we did a market survey to see if we could keep them and retain them as flats, and there was no market, etc., etc. Anyway, the thing that has been really important, it's really important to remember, is it's a very challenging site with a lot of our abnormal ground conditions, not to mention the sheer cost of bringing down the blocks in the first place. And what has eventually emerged has been that it's really important to get the difference between housing to rent and housing which is going to be sold at an affordable sale price, affordable housing. Now, I was absolutely thrilled in a way, although I don't know whether Together Housing were as thrilled, when they realised doing the sums that actually it made more sense to retain ownership of the properties that they're going to build themselves, and then to make those available to applicants from our key choice waiting list. That is absolutely fantastic. And I am really thrilled that there are many families that I know, some of whom I know have waited 2, 3 and 4 years in the local area, some with families with disabled children, all the rest of it, who may very well be getting housed in one of these new properties. So the first thing I want to be clear about is I'm absolutely thrilled that this development is going ahead. I also have to say that I have confidence in the Calderdale Together Housing Partnership, because what they're actually saying is, look, we're asking for the flexibility to be able to meet the commitment which we've given in the partnership to providing affordable housing, but to do so by regarding the sites right across Calderdale as different types of sites. And so in some senses, this has enabled them, the partnership, to come forward with proposals for these 110 new homes, which are going to be for rent, and actually to allow for a degree of cross-subsidisation, if you like, because there are some of the sites which might be available in other parts of Calderdale where there will be a greater receipt. Now, obviously, George Patterson from Together Housing is here, and you might want to ask him, and certainly Heidi Wilson, who knows much more than I do. But I just want to say that provided you choose to release this decision for implementation tonight, then what we are hoping is that the legal processes can be completed, and as Councillor Patient said, we can get the diggers in and start doing the footings early in the new year. And the other thing, which is absolutely brilliant, and I didn't even think we were ever going to do this, was that earlier this year we found out that we'd got the last bit of funding that we needed to enable us to do to refurbish all of the homes on the existing Beach Hill estate, to make them much more warm and secure. So there's an affordable warmth angle to that as well. So I think it's a win-win situation, and I hope very much that you'll release the decision for implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lynn. Now I'm going to bring in Mr. Patterson at this stage. Mr. Patterson, welcome to Place Scrutiny. I think it's only fair that we bring you in at this point. You're taking time out of your schedule to be here. So over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thanks to members for letting us come and speak this evening. I think the first thing I'd like to say is that I think there has been a misunderstanding between what we're trying to achieve on this site, and I'll just go through the points raised by Councillor Baker, Councillor Bellinger, and Councillor Holdsworth to start with, if that's okay. So, Councillor Baker, we are building all affordable housing on this site. It's 105 homes, and they'll all be affordable. They'll all be for rent, and hopefully the vast majority, if not all of them, will be for local people who will have a connection to the area. So I just wanted to reassure you, we are building affordable homes on the site. That was always the plan. This is a kind of a technical, if you like, a technical issue, and Councillor Caffrey will know this better than I do, given his history with funding and lending. And all we wanted was for the land transfer paperwork not to specifically say affordable housing, even though we are going to build affordable housing on the site. It's a technical issue that will impact on future values of the homes that we can borrow against. So it's a purely technical issue. However, we are building 105 affordable homes on the site. I think a couple of points, and I'll come to Councillor Berger's point in a minute, but the other thing about the site is that we've worked really closely, as Councillor Lynn says, with Calderdale over a number of years to try and make this happen. Heidi Wilson has been central to this. What we've had to do is, because the site certainly wasn't a commercial opportunity, the site itself had 3 high-rise blocks. It had a contaminated council depot at Stannery. It had crazy site levels, as usual in Calderdale. The levels are really horrendous. It means that we've had to do a significant amount of levelling. The council, the high-rise blocks, formerly council blocks, Penning took them over, had significant amounts of asbestos in there. We got removed all of that at a significant cost. I think £8 million or so was what we'd spent on it. So it certainly wasn't a commercial opportunity for Weave, and I'm sure the Weave company will have commercial opportunities elsewhere in Calderdale and will build homes, which is fantastic. We're not here to try and be in competition with Weave. We will work hand in hand with the council, whatever the situation is. On the site itself, the design that we've done is absolutely in partnership with Calderdale. The design was changed quite a bit in line with what residents wanted, in line with basically the cycle routes, the pedestrian routes, what we want to achieve with the planners, with the highways team. We worked really closely to come up with a design that we're all now relatively happy with. We had to lose a couple of properties off that site, but that was fine because we got the design that we wanted. The other point I would make on that, and Councillor Lynn's alluded to it, is that already we've identified at least, I think, 3 families through Choice Space who have got children with disabilities. We will be making adaptations to those properties, so they will get almost a bespoke home on that site in Calderdale. For people who've been, I worked for Calderdale Council for many years, and I live in Calderdale. And if you come from Leeds into Halifax, the first thing you used to see was 3 big empty tower blocks from that hill, and it was an absolute shambles. Now, what we'll have in a couple of years' time, all being well, is 105 brand new homes let to people who will live, hopefully work, and spend the money in Calderdale. What you'll have next door, hopefully, if we can get it, we've still a bit of work to do, Councillor Lynn, to get this to work, is another 70 homes that are old, shabby, tired, looks like a horrible place to live, but we'll turn that estate around as well. And you wouldn't get the second phase if we didn't get the first phase. So I generally think there's been a bit of a misunderstanding on what we're trying to achieve here. What I said to Councillor Patient, who is now the council representative on the CTIP board, is that perhaps at some point in the future, in the near future, I would be more than happy to come to a meeting with councillors to try and explain the full details of what we're trying to do in the partnership. And Heidi's worked closely with us. We will be building hopefully 105 homes in the Beach Hill area. We're already on site at Abbey Park with 63 homes and a further 20 for shared ownership. So I just want to reassure councillors that we're not in it for money. Our organisation is an organisation that works by renting properties to tenants, often the most poorest in the community. Having another 105 properties in Halifax in a great site is what I want. I don't want to sell properties. I want to rent them out, and hopefully for the foreseeable future. So I'll pause there. There might be some other questions, but I don't want to go anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. I do have a list of questions, but I know you clarified the situation there. May I just bring in quickly Councillor Baker, just to say, Councillor Baker, Does that satisfy any of your concerns here?
I mean, it's excellent to hear that they're all going to be affordable housing, because when I read the cabinet paper, obviously it talks about removing the requirement for affordable housing in the cabinet paper. So that gave me the impression that there wasn't going to be any affordable housing. I'm now being told that it's due to some technicality. Is that because if it's not stipulated on title deeds, it's affordable housing, you can raise more capital on it, because there could, in theory, then be the potential it could be sold at a higher commercial rate, and that
Absolutely,
I'm right.
Absolutely correct.
Okay,
yes.
well, I think then really is the main concern I had, and the purpose for calling kind of satisfied and answered there. So that's excellent news if it's all going to be affordable housing, and I hope just the final point then, if that's where the case, I'd probably be suggesting you do release this decision. I think the final point is the one about this 105 houses is fantastic, but let's not lose sight of what we say in our strategic housing needs assessment about needing 500 a year over the next kind of 3 to 5 years. Just a sense of the scale of how hard we're all going to have to work as an authority and with providers to achieve that level of affordable housing. So just so I can be entirely clear, they meet the definitions then of affordable housing under like the NPPF in terms of affordable rent criteria, and that some of them will be either that or starter homes or mixed shared ownership on the site.
Councillor, they'll all be affordable rent.
Yeah. Okay. All affordable rent. Okay. No, that's fantastic news.
Right. So, well, this is what we do on Place. We sort things out. We get to the crux of the issue here. So, well, I think this is great. Now, we do have some questions. I'll go through the questions quickly, but I'd advise members that Councillor Baker has said about releasing the decision. So I'll quickly go through members, but if you don't want to ask anything following this, please don't ask it, because otherwise it's superfluous to the debate. Okay, Councillor Caffrey.
Thank you, Chair. I had a list of things, and as I've been listening to Councillor Patient, George Patterson and Jenny Lynn, I've ticked most of them off, actually. It's been covered.
Good.
But can I just say to Councillor Patient, thanks for reminding me my time at Pennine, and I'm afraid I didn't get these demolished while I was on my watch. However, I managed to get Abbey Park demolished, so I got one result. if that helps at all. And I'm pleased to hear, George, that's been developed now, so thank you for that. I think we can get a bit bogged down sometimes with the technical term affordable housing. I mean, strictly speaking, it's 8% of market rents, but when you say affordable, it could be low cost affordable as well. And in order to get low cost, you've got to have a business plan, which I'm sure you all understand. It's a cross subsidy, and this has been mentioned already. So to have low cost housing or affordable housing, you've obviously got to have private housing, shared ownership, and a mixture. And sometimes these mixed tenure estates are better anyway. I'm not sure the stigma is attached to affordable housing as the paper seems to indicate. I really haven't really got much more to say, because I think you've covered it, and as it seems to be more accepted now that these are affordable houses, I won't prolong it, Chair, because I've said more or less what I want to say.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Caffrey. Appreciate that. I've got Councillor Young now. I suspect that was a recommendation to release. Councillor Young.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think George Patterson from Housing and Together Housing has really clarified the situation.
Yeah.
And I think we're all in agreement. It's great news for Calderdale Council to have 105 rented properties, brand new rented properties for people of Calderdale. So I want to release the decision for implementation, please.
Well said. I'll quickly go to Councillor Fenton Glynn. Are you okay?
Yeah, I mean, I just got a text from Councillor Kavanagh saying don't try to say anything clever. So I'm a bit worried about saying anything. Although
Stop.
the risk at this time of day of me saying anything clever is probably quite marginal. What I'd say, it looks like a good scheme. It looks like we probably got the communication a bit wrong at the start of it, and I think that's something that we need to look at. But also, I think this probably raises something. And I know we're going to have a slightly impromptu work plan discussion at the end of this meeting anyway, but it probably raises the point that Councillor Baker made as a well-made point, that we have, we now have a plan to build 100 of our 500 a year affordable homes, and we've got other plans as well. But I just wonder if this would be something that's appropriate to look at in our work plan, kind of long term, and whether George Patterson would be happy to come back and to kind of alongside Scott and talk through our plans for more affordable homes. And if people are happy with that, then that should be something that we look to do in the new year. Maybe if I'm re-elected in May, who knows?
Yeah, was that a plug, Councillor Glynn? Yeah, no problem. Let's, Alex, could you please kindly add that to the work programme, please? Just add it to the Excel sheet. Good. Now I'm a sucker for procedure, so we do need to go to the people who've called in. First of all, Councillor Holdsworth, but you don't need to say anything if you don't wish, if we're releasing it. Yeah, perfect. Councillor Bellinger, where are you? Are you okay?
Yes, I'm fine with that, Chair. I'm happy. I think everything's been covered this evening. I'm just concerned that we missed an opportunity, but I'm happy with what's been said. And I think, as Councillor Finton Glynn has said, it's really down to communication at the end of the day. And I'm sure that's something that can be looked into and resolved later on. Thank you, Chair.
Perfect. And then Councillor Baker.
George, need a second for my proposal, George.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going through, because first of all, we go through the people who have called the decision in, and then we go on to recommendations. So, Councillor, I'll second it though. Councillor.
No, I mean it'd be fantastic if the panel does look at that affordable homes issue, and if one thing comes out of tonight is a bit of a focus on all our minds on what target we've got to try and work together to achieve, and I think that would be a good outcome of the meeting. I look forward to seeing the new homes being built.
Perfect, exciting stuff. Yeah.
Chair, can I just say briefly? I mean, this is really good because I know George made reference to the fact that being really transparent and sort of opening up the conversation to councillors about what the forward plan is and how we can do it together. So I'm really pleased to sort of hear that it's been put on the work plan, so we have the opportunity to come back and just speak about the broader future of what we're trying to do with the Together Housing Investment Partnership.
Yeah, I think it'll be good to get a site visit as well. It'll be interesting. Councillor Young, so I'll second your recommendation to release. Could we go to the vote, please? All in favour of releasing the decision? Yeah, just looking, and that is unanimous. Yeah, very good. So it's released. Right, so thank you to Mr. Patterson. Thank you to the Cabinet members for attending. Now, at this stage, before members of the board rush off, we have finished the agenda for this evening. So, Carol, the meeting's closed. You may take it off YouTube. We're done. But we have got a quick thing to discuss. Councillor Fenton Glynn, would you like to introduce this?
Just one moment, please.
Oh.
Alex, could you please pass the chair back to the host back to me, please?
Yes, I have.